So on to our first match. We are paired against HJ Kaiser, who I am fairly sure will be on Jeskai Lurrus as well. So we promptly lose the die roll and get to confirm that he's going to be on a Lurrus deck first. And we... I don't know. This hand is very borderline. Like, it's fine, but not amazing. So in the... Okay, so we've kept it. I mean, this hand is, as I said, it's the definition of fine. You know, it'll play magic, it can cast a ponder, it can bauble, it can possibly force of will, depending on what we find. And we can play out a Dreadhorde fairly early. So Dreadhorde alone is kind of enough to often take over games, so it's not entirely unreasonable. Picking up a blue card for the force is pretty much perfect here. And we'll go ahead and ponder. And I think we want to take this because this looks like a new land, a Swords to Plowshares, and a Shuffle. Although the bauble is... Okay, so I've chosen to shuffle there instead. And I can see why. It's because the bauble will draw us into all three cards, and I don't think I want that many lands. I want a second land. I wonder if maybe I could have just held the bauble, and that might have been a better option. But that's okay. We have plenty of redraws here. Opponent's going to wasteland us. We're going to bauble now just because we might as well. And draw for turn and try and put... I think this was incorrect. I was definitely meant to just play out the Plateau to try and get the Dreadhorde Arcanist online, but it is what it is. So we now have double Force of Will in our hand plus Dreadhorde Arcanist, which is often going to be enough to get a game going. We will run out our Volk and Preordain. We want to find exactly land, so we'll bottom the Pyroblast and keep the Probe, I think. And we get to reveal a pretty solid hand. The missing mana, and when they go to cast their spell, we can, you know, realistically win counter war if it's on their turn. So opponent's going to Merchant Scroll, and wonder if we were probably meant to force that. But I guess we're trying to go after the Ancestral instead. So we're going to get a Dreadhorde Arcanist down. We're going to hold the bauble. The reason to hold the bauble here is just because next turn we are going to play Third Path Iconoclast, play bauble, play attack with Arcanist, probably Probe again, or maybe Ponder. I don't know. No, okay, we didn't hold the bauble. We should have held the bauble. I'm making a lot of mistakes. Although actually, I guess our Third Path Iconoclast here is actually our Force Pitch, so never mind, I was incorrect. Yeah, I think that was actually right. Because we're not... I don't think we're playing this out. Or at least not anytime soon. So opponent's going to Ancestral here. We can Force of Negation. Exiling Preordain. Opponent will force back. We can force their force. Making sure that we force their force, not their Ancestral, because we want to exile it. Okay, so we'll play out a Lavinia here, putting our opponent in a pretty hard spot. Let's pop this out to make life easier. We'll probe to see that we've got all our relevant information in their hand for their hand, and we've now locked their Sapphire out. And now we have Merchant Scroll for Ancestral with Lavinia plus Dreadhorde Arcanist, and opponent's going to concede here. So we're going to go to game 2. So game 2, obviously we're on the draw. Let me just pop my graveyard out again. Now, I remember, so when I boarded, all I boarded in was Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast and Flusterstorm. When I think actually what I should have also boarded in is the 2 Prismatic Endings. I've often found 4 swords is enough, but I think we can lose a couple of our baubles and just keep the 1 bauble in order just to have more action against our opponent's deck. Our opponent's deck is going to be playing Ragavan. While I'm generally fairly low on Ragavan, I do think it does make you considerably better in the mirror. Assuming you can, keep the board otherwise clear of threats. The reason it's really good in the mirror is their deck's almost identical to yours. It's all cards that you want to be playing anyway. So Ragavan just tends to work really well. So back to the match. We will reveal our Lurrus. And we have to mulligan this. This is a much better hand. And we're going to bottom the second Force of Will. So we're keeping Force for, like dealing with an Ancestral or something like that. Swords to Plowshares for a creature. We need to Force here. Okay. And our opponent has a pretty good start. So an Ancestral, Force of Will backup, and a Dreadhorde Arcanist. So they will take this game over fairly quickly if this Swords doesn't resolve. We feel pretty clever for actually keeping it. And goodbye Arcanist. And there's a Ragavan. So we now need to drop out our 3rd Path Iconoclast here, and we need this to trade with the Ragavan. Now the problem with this is we're playing the mirror, and opponent is almost certainly going to have a Red Blast, and that's what's going to happen here. I think this is a little bit of a forced play here. Like we could try to preordain into another sword, but I think our chances of doing that are slim. And if the 3rd Path Iconoclast here lives even a turn, it's going to put us in a pretty good position. So it's definitely the highest upside play, but obviously it hasn't panned out. An opponent has our dig through time. This is almost enough for us to concede here, but so interestingly, they exiled their Ancestral instead of using their treasure token, which is something I don't think I personally would have done. just because I think I quite value having an ancestral in my graveyard for my Dreadhorde Arcanist to come back to. They're obviously confident in their game dominance, and at this point it's looking pretty convincing. Like, between them having got 2 hits off us, and whoops, I clicked through that a little bit fast, and here I make a mistake, yet another one, and I top so that Ragavan is going to hit my Mox, and I concede. So from here, go on to game 3, and this time we get to be on the play. And I can't remember, so I didn't fix my sideboard. So yeah, we're still not playing the prismatic endings that I think we definitely need. We're going to keep this hand. I think this is... I really like this hand in this matchup. We've got, like Swords to Plowshares for turn 1 threat. We have Lavinia to deploy on turn 2. We have a Strip Mine to follow it up with. We're going to Brainstorm in our end step. And we won't particularly care if it gets countered, because then we have other cantrips to follow it up. In fact, we'd really like Brainstorm to eat a Reb. Opponent just puts their Lurrus in hand. Okay, and we've grabbed a Volk, and I don't think it matters terribly which land we grab here. Both are going to be fine. And I guess, so one of these cards is going away, and from where we're at, I think it might end up being the second Swords to Plowshares. Oh no, okay. So I've insulated against creature threats very heavily. So I guess that's in response to their Lurrus. So getting to drop a Lavinia with force back up there is strong, obviously. We now just need to protect it. And we will do that. I think we maybe should have tried to protect the Lavinia, but also I guess that plays into a Red Blast. So we can Strip Mine their blue source. Still hold up Swords. And naturally they draw an island. And we're just going to sit on this Preordain for now. We could be using it, but we still just want to be able to hold up a force at some point. We do need to kill a Lurrus at some point. Here I think we can just go ahead and get our creature. We're still holding up a Swords to Plowshares. This is one of those times where Plateau is relevant, because it does allow us to fetch for red and still hold up white. Let the Ponder happen. Gitaxian Probe obviously means that they know what's up. And we're not going to force this Ancestral. So we're starting to feel quite behind. Opponents managed to probably just have a much better draw than mine between, Probe, Ancestral, Double Mox. They've had a pretty strong draw. But we're not out of it yet. So here we can... So I guess what I would want to do... This is interesting because there's a question of whether or not you want to cast the third path Iconoclast next turn, get rid of the Preordain and exile the Volk, or if you want to take the cantrip value. Okay. So I've obviously made a decision to take the threat, which I think either was a pretty reasonable line. This plays more towards winning the game and maximising what we can do with Lurrus. I'll let the Lurrus go. We will end step Swords to Plowshares. And it was strange that they ran it out there instead of holding it. Okay, now we want to... Okay, we don't really care about losing our Iconoclast there. We will... I think here we should bottom the Dreadhorde Arcanist, take the Force. Obviously I've decided I just want a double Arcanist. And we're just not countering anything into what we, once again, we're just confident there's a red blast there somewhere. So we'll drop out our Arcanist. We say our opponent's Prismatic Ending coming to save them there, and run out our Lavinia, which eats a Reb. So we just started to try and chew through their card advantage. All we need is one Lurrus turn, and I think we can probably take this over. And here we get to try to deploy a Lurrus with counterspell backup, and unfortunately opponents, they've just drawn infinite interaction. It is just the nature of them having drawn a stack more cards than us. Although not as many as I thought, given they're on 32 cards. Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. So this Arcanist is a big deal here. And basically the moment this Arcanist is down, this Ancestral goes off and we're just finished. So this is why we're scooping it up at this place. We hung in pretty well, and I think we played this game a lot better than the previous two. But we just couldn't push through their card advantage. So that's the end of match 1. So it's a pretty rough start to the challenge.